Good evening. It's 8 o'clock. The top headlines tonight. Is there a breakthrough in the Russia war? 34 days after it began, Russia's peace offer at talks in Turkey saying ready to radically reduce military operations. A major breakthrough. It's their first peace offer. They offer to reduce military activity near two key cities, including the capital Kyiv. After 34 days, the first offer of de-escalation. But our special report, the amazing Ukraine fight back, is that what's behind Russia's peace move as Ukraine reclaims key cities from Russian forces? Meanwhile, global markets rise after Russia's white flag. Petrol hits a century across major cities in India today. The new hikes have sent petrol above the 100 rupees a litre mark. But the good news is that global oil prices dropped tonight after Russia's truce offer. The day after that slap, actor Will Smith's apology to host Chris Rock. He says on Insta, "My actions are not indicative of the man I want to be." Delhi hits 40 degrees today in March. That's a record. Meanwhile, a forest fire across Rajasthan's tiger sanctuary as Indian Air Force helicopters are currently battling a Sariska sanctuary blaze. Well, breaking news tonight. Will Russia actually de-escalate 34 days after President Putin began a war? Major breakthrough after peace talks in Turkey. Joining me tonight is Andrew Hopkins, who's currently in Ankara in Turkey. Also, of course, Vishnu Shom, who's been tracking that story. Mr. Hopkins, over to you first. What's the latest you are hearing? And Russia's surprise peace offer, what's the analysis of it? And has there been any Ukraine response yet?
Well, today's the first time we've really heard some of the details about what the Ukraine is offering, what it's willing to talk about. And what it's said so far is that it's willing to be a non-aligned, non-nuclear country. So it wouldn't be joining NATO, but it would maybe be allowed to join the EU, but it wants some security guarantees. And those guarantees would be provided by at least 8 countries. It actually mentioned those countries today, and they are China, the United States, France, Turkey, Canada, Poland, Israel, and of course Russia, who would have to be involved. And what they say, how this would work, is that if it was the subject of aggression, then there would be a 3-day period in which there could be room for a diplomatic solution to be found. And if that doesn't work, then after that, these guarantors outside of Russia, I expect, would then be allowed to give Ukraine weapons, military equipment, and the skies would be closed and it would be able to fight back. Right. And that's basically what we've heard today. And Russia is saying that it's willing to sort of scale back its fighting around Kyiv and Chernihiv, which you just mentioned. These are areas where Russia has, well, according to some reports, has already been lowering its military activity because of the fight back from Ukraine. We haven't had any direct response to that yet from the Ukrainian government.
So how is this offer at both Ukraine's and Russia's offers actually being viewed? Are we seeing global optimism? We are hearing that President Biden is likely to get on a talk with phone conversation with European leaders later tonight. How is this being viewed from Turkey, where you are, and globally?
Well, the Turkish foreign minister has said this has been the most meaningful progress so far since these negotiations have been going on several weeks. There have been 3 meetings near Belarus, the border with Belarus, and then a virtual meeting, and now this one for the first time in Turkey. And he's expecting the foreign ministers of the 2 countries now to get together and discuss these proposals. And I think because Turkey is basically the only country who's managed to bring these 2 countries together. It's had these good relations with both sides so far. There's a lot of interest and a lot of expectation on what is happening here, and a lot of hope, really, that it can bring about some kind of solution to the conflict there. There was this NATO summit a few days ago, Leader Summit. It was quite clear, I think, that a lot of the other leaders were quite keen to find out what was going on in all these discussions, and we've got a bit more of an idea today of where it's all going.
That's great, Mr. Hopkins. Thank you so much for your perspective, joining us there tonight from Turkey. And that really, I think the word hope, really summing it up, because it's a war we've seen in 34 days where we've seen millions of refugees, women and children leave Ukraine. We've seen of the civilian casualties, again of young children, women, all men above 18 being conscripted into the army there. Really, the human cost of war has been so shocking. Any hope that comes. Now, importantly, as was pointed out just now, the fact that Ukraine has pledged neutrality, that's a key demand there. Also, Russia scaling back, saying their focus is on the Donbass region, and that perhaps behind that peace offer. But let's just look at also what Vishnu has on how that Ukraine fight back, because really this is the war between, some would say, really the David versus Goliath war, with Ukraine fighting back against Russia and holding them off. So let's just look at that context, Vishnu, as well.
Yeah, in fact, we've got a map over here, and we're going to really explain where the fighting has been taking place. Now, if this is the map of Ukraine, let's bring up the big cities first and give you an idea of where exactly the withdrawal or the claim that they're going to withdraw is actually going to happen. Kiev, that's the capital of Ukraine, and Chernihiv, these two areas right up here in the north. Let's zoom in over here. In fact, these are the areas where the Russians say they're going to de-escalate. This is very significant. Without the Russians being able to hold Kiev, or if now that they've chosen not to hold Kiev or try to hold Kiev, it means that the dynamics of this war have changed completely. But all of the other cities over here are cities, many of which are under siege. But it all boils down to what Russia is going to do next. And that has a great deal to do with the Donbass region. So let's just change over here and focus a little bit on the Donbass region. Remember, just a few weeks back, Russia declared this region, which has the twin cities of Donetsk and Luhansk, to actually be independent. Now, this is an area where Russian separatists have controlled since 2014. So the big point that we're actually looking at is this: if Russia moves away from Kiev and from Chernihiv and looks to consolidate their position further east over here in the Donbass, then is that where the war is actually going to go? Now, let's move to the next page and take a look at the areas which Russia presently controls. These are areas in white where the Russian forces have actually come in. Very important to mention over here that many of the key cities in Russia, for example, Kherson, Kharkiv, Sumy, and Mariupol, are sieged by the Russians. They face a siege from Russian forces, but Ukrainian forces continue to fight back. Mariupol perhaps more destroyed than any other Ukrainian city. Kherson, till recently, it was believed was more or less in Russian control, but now a remarkable story taking place of how there is a fight back there as well. Let's move to the next page, and this next page actually shows you the positions where the Ukrainians have actually brought their forces. White, the Russian forces; blue over here are the Ukrainian forces. And let's focus a little bit more on the Donbass region itself, because if we zoom into the next page over here, it's actually quite interesting and important to point out, if Russia moves away from the Kiev area further in over here, tries to regroup in the Donbass area, then the possibility is that they would try and move to the west and they would try and fight the Ukrainian forces in this region. This is the bulk of where Ukraine, along this line over here, has actually deployed their forces. So just one final point over here. Let's go back to the original first page, if we can. The areas where Russia has actually, Ukraine has now actually made enormous progress. One of those areas lies to the west of Kiev, an area called Irpin, and another area south of Sumy, where within the last 48 hours there has been considerable Ukrainian movement. So that gives you a broad idea of what Russia may be trying to do: consolidate in this area by moving away from this one. But let's also take a look now at some of the key technology which the British have been providing them with state-of-the-art surface-to-air missile systems. It's called the Star Streak. It's a missile which you can actually see over here on the screen. It flies at Mach 3, 3 times the speed of sound. It is by and large unspoofable. In other words, decoy systems, countermeasures being used by helicopters and by aircraft don't really work on it. It's actually got 3 projectiles which come out of it. These are tungsten warheads which actually hit a particular target, which would be an aircraft or a helicopter. Ukrainian forces just in the last couple of days have inducted this, and it really adds to their arsenal.
Right, Vishnu. In fact, let's just sum up that breaking news. We're hearing right now, Vishnu, that in fact a draft offer, Ukraine has said that a draft offer has been given to Moscow. We've just heard those details also from the correspondent in Turkey, making that point that how Ukraine has pledged neutrality, saying it will be non-aligned and asking for 8 countries as guarantor of this peace, including China. Russia already saying it will scale back military activity. So major breakthrough likely after 34 days of a war in which over 1,000 civilians are said to have been killed. So global markets gaining tonight as investors cheer this major breakthrough post the first round of peace talks in Turkey. French and German stock markets surged over 3%. European stocks climbing over 2%, and oil prices, now this really has a global impact, are easing to $105 per barrel. Let's look at today's stock markets, which is in India, which of course closed before the major breakthrough came in, but the Sensex gained 350 points. The Nifty also gained 103 points. So good news there on a possible breakthrough, which means hopefully that there will be lessening of these oil prices, and it couldn't come any earlier for India because currently India petrol prices have already hit a century across major cities today. The government says because of the Ukraine war, so if we get a breakthrough, will prices go down?
Petrol prices in all 4 metros over 100 rupees a litre as fuel prices went up for the 7th time in 8 days, resulting in the steepest hike since the start of the pandemic with today's increase.
सरकार सीधी सी बात है लूट रही है, इसमें और कोई दो राय नहीं है।
10,000-12,000 रुपए कमाने वाला अगर मान लो 100-150 रुपए का पेट्रोल डेली फूंक जाएगा तो बचेगा क्या?
जेब पे बहुत ज़्यादा असर पड़ रहा है, जेब पे बहुत ज़्यादा सैलरियाँ वहीं की वहीं है, सैलरियाँ बढ़ नहीं रही हैं।
The hikes follow the growing uncertainty about the Ukraine war and sanctions against Russia, which have led to a greater volatility in international crude markets. Brent crude oil prices rose above $110 per barrel during trading today.
We are also facing the situation of a full-blown war in Ukraine, which is not some war in some corner of the world, but it is seemed to be having impact on all countries. But this impact is disruption to very many supplies. The value chains are all broken.
The frequent rise in petrol and diesel prices has raised the spectre of high inflation, and the common man is fearing a rise in prices of essential items. There are demands to cut the high taxes and duties on petrol and diesel. As per the latest report released by Indian Oil, the retail price of petrol in Delhi was 95.41 rupees per litre on 16th of March. The share of excise duty in the retail price of petrol was 27.9 rupees per litre, and VAT accounted for 15.5 rupees per litre. So the total share of central excise and Delhi government's VAT was 43.4 rupees per litre, that is 45.48%.
As our input cost increases, the cost of the freight charges will increase in the coming days, affecting the prices of the essential, non-essential commodities.
भी व्यवस्था बिगड़ गई है, लेकिन सरकार को इसकी कोई परवाह नहीं है, क्योंकि एक बार इलेक्शन वो जीतने के बाद लगातार हर दिन को वो बढ़ाते जा रहे हैं।
The Ukraine war and the consequent increase in the crude oil prices is beginning to hurt India's oil economy. With the oil import bill going up, the increase in the price of diesel is all set to push inflation rate further up in the country. In Delhi with Ashwini Mehra, Himanshu Shekhar for NDTV.
Well, let's just go across to Uttar Pradesh. At the State Assembly today, the Chief Minister addresses for the first time since his new government took charge. Also speaking was the leader of opposition, Akhilesh Yadav.
जो हम देश के अंदर भी देखते हैं, उत्तर प्रदेश के अंदर भी देखते हैं, जनता कभी नकारात्मकता को स्वीकार नहीं करती, कभी नहीं। नकारात्मकता के लिए उसके हृदय में कोई स्थान है ही नहीं। जो सकारात्मक होगा, जो प्रगतिशील होगा, जो लोक कल्याण का कारक होगा, जनता उसी को अंगीकार करती। अभी तो केवल हम इतना कहना चाहते हैं विपक्ष के होने के नाते कि समय समय पर आपके संरक्षण की जरूरत पड़ेगी, और जितना आप विपक्ष को मौका देंगे उतना लोकतंत्र मजबूत होगा। क्योंकि आज इलेक्टेड गवर्नमेंट के आप स्पीकर हैं। हम सब जनता के बीच में गए थे, उसके बाद इलेक्ट होकर के आए, और जब हम इलेक्ट होकर के आए हैं तब हमने आपको इलेक्ट कर समझ से बैठाया है। आपको उतना ध्यान देना पड़ेगा कि जो इलेक्टेड गवर्नमेंट है वो कोई तानाशाह गवर्नमेंट न बन जाए।
Well, interesting times ahead likely there, with the Chief Minister facing off with Leader of Opposition Akhilesh Yadav in the run-up to 2024. Meanwhile, Mamata Banerjee, West Bengal Chief Minister's nephew Abhishek Banerjee, was meant to be questioned today by the Enforcement Directorate. He didn't appear. His wife has been called tomorrow. And Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee has written to opposition leaders across the country over what she says is the alleged misuse of central agencies by the BJP government, as her nephew, who is the General Secretary of the Trinamool Congress, and wife have been called for questioning. Well, there are new records being created with heat, as Delhi's already hit 40 degrees in March this year. That's a record, and of course not just Delhi, across India. 40 degrees is now the new normal for March.
Delhi NCR has crossed the 40°C mark for 2 days in a row. The same is expected for tomorrow. This is 8 degrees above normal for this time of the year.
एक्चुअली मॉर्निंग में थोड़ा वेदर ठीक था, कंफर्टेबल था, तो हमने सोचा कि आज प्रॉपर रहेगा, लेकिन जब घर से निकला तब फील किया कि नहीं, इट्स टू हॉट, और हाँ, इसमें मैनेज करना थोड़ा मुश्किल तो हो रहा है।
फरीदाबाद से जब से निकले हैं तो ये तीसरी बोतल खोल चुके हैं हम क्योंकि रास्ते में भी ट्रैफिक जाम भी बहुत ज़्यादा था।
कहाँ से हैं?
मेरठ से।
मेरठ से। दिल्ली में अभी गर्मी बहुत बढ़ गई, आपको कैसे लग रही है गर्मी?
बहुत ज़्यादा लग रही है गर्मी।
अच्छा,
अपने यूपी से ज़्यादा लग रही है।
अच्छा,
अपनी यूपी से ज़्यादा है।
यहाँ जू आए हैं, इसके बाद क्या क्या करेंगे?
बट घर चले जाएंगे इसके बाद।
और गर्मी में और कुछ नहीं किया जा रहा है?
नहीं, यही घूम ले, यही काफ़ी है।
Experts say the heat is being carried from Pakistan, which is crossing 45 degrees, towards western and parts of North India.
Presently, we have a daily severe heat wave conditions as per the temperatures. Even Rajasthan also we have a severe heat wave conditions, and even West MP also we are expecting severe heat wave conditions. Presently, northerly wind likely to come over, specifically over Punjab, Haryana and Western Himalaya region. Even Delhi temperature will also comfortable after 2 days. But the heat wave conditions over entire initial other parts like Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, it is likely to continue next 4-5 days.
The reason for the heat is that western disturbances or storms from the Atlantic Ocean have not yet entered India. For the past 4 years, western disturbances have skipped India in the month of March. Without them, the weather is dry and cloudless. The effects of global warming have been made worse by the absence of westerly winds this month. But Delhiites have braved the severe heat wave anyway, armed with cold drinks and ice creams. With Kanan Patra, Meher Pandey for NDTV.
And the unseasonal heat in March, could it lead to what's currently a huge forest fire in the Rajasthan Tiger Reserve of Siriska? The fire is currently spread over 10 square kilometers. The fire broke out yesterday evening. 2 Indian Air Force helicopters were used today to sprinkle water, the airlifting water from a nearby lake and dropping it over Siriska, which is one of Rajasthan's best known tiger sanctuaries. Villages around the area have also been cleared. The fire threatens the territory of the well-known tigress ST-17, who is currently in Siriska's Tiger Reserve with her 2 cubs.